Hello everybody, L.S.S.T community advocate and educator here, back again with a little bit of insolvency and accounting and some transparent local accounting and what we kind of need to be looking at. Well, a lot of times we think that we can understand a lot of city accounting and just because we can balance our piggy bank in our pockets, we think we have a pretty good gist of what's going on with our local accounting. And our local accounting should be pretty transparent. It should be easy to read. It should be easy to comprehend. And it should be very easy access for residents to be able to attain these documents and the things that are going on. Now, everybody goes, well, why don't you just attend a council meeting? Well, not everybody can attend a council meeting once a week or for a couple hours or what have you. It's pretty tough for people who are working to find that time. And so city websites should be showing the links, the hyperlinks, to be able to show those documentations. No resident should be able to have to hunt down and go through the ringer to find what they already pay for. But to better understand some solvency and insolvency issues, hopefully we can go a little bit better about this. Now, we should know about it because first off, our taxes pay, our homes, our businesses, and properties pay for the town's solvency. And it only works if we have good management and good placing of where money and how money is being spent and for the long haul. And some may even wonder why there's an overtaxation of finances in our town and why nothing's really progressing. And it's tough for a lot of people, but you got to kind of pay attention to things such as if the town's actually running a profit, or over the long term, or are they going for a very fast fix? Because that's a pretty clear indicator that your town's pretty well insolvent, is when they're trying to do things for a fast fix and not for the long haul. It's a pretty shameful thing. However, that comes just back down to management of our taxes. Now, we don't only just pay for the funding, but we also usually pay for things like the transactions, the long-term liabilities, or the maintenance on those infrastructures, if they're old or if they are new. And usually if they're new infrastructures, we are the ones getting stuck with the new infrastructure bill. But that's for a later date. But usually when infrastructures start to add up, due to becoming the way that one street or one area was built long before another area was built, and then you have a new area built, all those basic bills come due at different times. So it's tough sometimes for city to manage what needs to be done and when. So we need to learn things like what is the difference between an operating budget and a capital budget. And basically how that breaks down is money that comes from the operating budget from the things like taxes and the fees that are collected in the same year is being spent. So those are operating budgets. And then you have things like the money for the capital budgets, which are coming from basically anywhere. And while cities usually routinely spend more than they're actually making, and more rapidly, they're usually in financial trouble. It's just a matter of when the insolvency is going to hit them. And while municipalities aren't really allowed to take on debt into their operating budgets, they are allowed, however, to use debt for their capital budgets, which is it seems confusing, but we'll get to that too. But operating and capital budgets are basically, they're just accounting distinctions. So it's like, oh, well, this is that, and what have you. They're not really real ones. They're just accounting distinctions. So it seems like everybody knows what they got and what's going where. There's really no distinction, so you can't really tell what's going where and why. However, what you can tell is in time the debt that comes and accumulates. So basically, it doesn't matter if you have a dollar bill in your left hand or a dollar bill in your right hand. Either way, it's the same thing. So when cities are borrowing from their capital, they're borrowing from their operating budget, the impact is the same thing on a balance sheet. It doesn't distinguish any difference. So two companies, right? We have two companies and they both have $1 million in cash. So for those cash profits, they're going to need things like new equipment, shareholders, which are basic taxpayers, who demand a dividend. Basically, they want to see what the sum of this is going to end up to be. One company uses their $1 million to pay dividends to the shareholders while borrowing $1 million. Now, we all know if you pay it out, you're also creating debt. So if you're paying out to one and you have $1 million coming back in, it's creating a debt regardless. And so you are investing in that for the first company in like $1 million, and it's new equipment, and it's to increase sales. The second company, however, decides to use their cash to invest it specifically in like new equipment, new street cleaners, new plows, new whatever, and then they borrow the $1 million to pay the dividends to the shareholders. So either way, it's a debt. So it's zero in cash, $1 million in debt, $1 million for new equipment. It doesn't really matter. So basically, it's like a wish-wash of money back and forth. You can put it in operating and put it in this and in capital and blah, blah, blah. You can just keep pushing it back and forth. There's really not much of a distinction. However, what does make it crystal clear, what makes it harder, is the fact that residents don't really pay attention. Some just don't care. We vote them in, they just go with it and say they're doing a great job, not realizing that the town is insolvent or they're paying out massive amounts of debt back to investors, and we're being overtaxed to fill that void that's left over. So basically, it's just a simple way of covering up insolvency, is all it is. So you pay out $1 million to your investors, but you got to get $1 million back somehow. So what you're doing is you're taking from one account to another, and you're creating a hole of debt regardless. So now, let's say if you have it in one account for things like equipment and things like that, and you take that $1 million away from that account, you no longer can buy that equipment or pay for those people. So one of the first things that cities begin to do is they begin to outsource all of their services. And what I mean by that is recently in our town, they have privatized their electrical work. They have an electrical company, Global One, that does their work. You also have things like where a year or so ago, where they did a large firing or letting go of city workers on the Parks Department, City Street Department, and they kind of outsourced it to work release. Cheap labor, they don't have to pay much for it, and that's kind of how that works out. Simply road maintenance has gone basically privatized. Concrete work has gone privatized to small people, little hand-me-outs, things like that. So here's an example of outsourcing and what can happen. So let's say the city's doing its own road work. And while they're doing their own road work, they kind of mix in operating and capital funds. And the cost of buying, like, say, machinery or paying for concrete, sidewalks, or whatever the case is, and other long-term expenses were actually capital expenses. And so the city could borrow money for these if they needed to. However, significantly, you have to pay for the workers, you have to pay for the worker wages, you have to pay for fuel for the machinery, and other short-term expenses, maybe something that's screwed up, or forms, or something going on there. Those are operating, okay? But by contracting out road work and those small services, all those kinds of services start to get lumped into one product. So a newly maintained road, which is actually capital expenses. And so by outsourcing that work, that privatized work, the city kind of turns a sizable portion of their operating expenses into capital expenses, and the end result basically is going to be the same. It's just going to be a newly maintained road, but for now, you could fund the expenses that, well, used to be in operations, but you're doing it now with debt. Stay with me for the next three things of how to find out that your city is going insolvent. I'm the Lake Station Community Advocate and Educator here. Yes, I'm educating you, I hope. If not, well, you don't have to watch. But check out Lake Station Strong Towns Collective on Facebook, Lake Station Strong Local Conversation as well. You found me here, and soon I will be having YouTube as well. Be an eagle, don't be a crow. Be sure to hold your leadership in town with some integrity, some accountability, and some responsibility of your money, of your taxes. We should be seeing some things progressing, not regressing or being stagnant. Stagnation is also a pretty clear indicator that the town is going solvent, and it's just a matter of time before things fall apart. Stay with me for the next part.